G'day there guys, how's it going? Markee here, back at it again with another episode of r/Legal Advice. Now if you're feeling in the mood for some bloody good legal advice, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this bloody good content. Posted by user Zamshi, titled, Arizona. I'm in a situation where I can lose my son because the mother is mentally unstable. Hello. My girlfriend, now ex as of yesterday, had my son in April of 2020. I did not sign the birth certificate since she cheated on me multiple times during our relationship. I told her I would sign it once we get a test done. We got one done, and it turns out I am the father. It is not a legal document due to third party not doing a test and submitting it as illegal test results. Recently, our relationship has taken a turn. She cheated on me again, and for the last time. During our relationship, she has shown a lot of signs of being unstable. She has been arrested multiple times due to setting a bathroom on fire in middle school to getting into fights with her family. A couple days after our son was born, she decided to take it upon herself to move out of my parents' house, taking our son, moving in with a friend. I told her if she moves out, she will break us up. She threw a huge fit and said she might hurt the baby and herself. I purposefully looked away because I figured she was just stressed from the baby, our breakup, and hormones. We broke up, but decided to try ourselves out again. This was only a month into our new relationship, and she cheats on me again. I break up with her, she throws another guilting fit, and threatens that she feels bad thoughts again, and feels like she will hurt herself or the baby. I am at my end with her. Her family, my family, and some of our friends are aware of this, and see her as an unfit to parent. They are telling me to call CPS, but what would CPS do? I legally cannot take the baby since I am not acknowledged as the legal father. What do I do? Thank you. Call CPS. Someone is threatening to hurt an infant. They should not be left alone with the infant. Keep records of all threats. If she is threatening to hurt herself, have police do a wellness check. Keep all records of conversations. Call CPS now. You must first make sure your child is protected. If he is removed, make yourself known to the agency, explaining your status as bio dad but not on the birth certificate. Even when children are removed for emergency issues, they will want to see what family could be the one to take the child instead of foster care. As the father, you should be where that starts. It sounds as though you need to sort out how to get a binding, acknowledged paternity test and declare yourself as dad, whatever that might entail. To update, 4 hours ago I called CPS and the police for a wellness check. I have yet to hear back from the police. They said they would call me after the check. A little worried. Update, Arizona. I am losing my son because of unstable ex-girlfriend. This is an update to my situation. Our sheriff did a welfare check on the home my ex-girlfriend is staying at, and he found nothing that would demonstrate that she is unstable. Despite me having proof, the sheriff who took my case disregarded it due to this text's being old. I have a number of people supporting my case. The people who she is staying with told the officer that they are not aware of her reckless behavior despite her attempting to leave their home and walking to literally who knows where in 105-degree weather. I can't help but feel like I've been cheated. I feel that the baby is unsafe with her, but I cannot do anything about it because I am not on the birth certificate. I am just a man who could be the potential father. Posted by user Bamith, titled, My grandmother got admitted to the hospital by my aunt without my mother's permission. Due to the pandemic, nobody can see her, and currently she is not allowed to leave. She gets very paranoid when alone at a hospital. They currently have her tied down. She is 96 years old. Don't post anywhere often. This is happening in United States, Mississippi. So, my aunt was supposed to take my grandmother to the doctor to get her legs checked. Her doctor is close to a black community, and my aunt is a bit of a racist tramp. So she cancelled that appointment herself. She had no right to do that, took my grandmother to the emergency room. Also no right to do that, and then left her there, giving them my mother's number to contact instead of her own. It has been multiple days since that happened, and my grandmother's mental condition has drastically worsened without anyone she knows around her. Can't visit due to the pandemic. She has refused to take her medicine, eat, or anything else, and has been trying to fight staff so she can get her dry tobacco. Yes, She has done tobacco for 70 plus years and still manages to be in great physical condition. As of today, my mother has told me they have tied her down and put a tube in her down her throat to force her to take medicine and eat. Again, 96 years old. Repeated calls to the hospital over the last few days have not yielded any results, and we have not even been able to speak with her. To say in the most moderate way possible, this has likely completely screwed up my grandmother, and has also screwed up my mother as well, as she has been crying hysterically over how much her mother must hate her now. I have been consoling her. Currently, tomorrow morning, we are set to go to the hospital to try and get her out, since her husband knows some people there. My aunt will be getting her arm twisted to get her to come as well to sort this mess out. Mother is currently extremely ticked off and considering to sue the hospital. Does anyone in your family have a medical power of attorney for your grandmother? If not, the hospital is not even going to discuss her care with you. Most questions I might have to answer in the morning when we go to the hospital. It's been a long day and I didn't know if I would have time to type this later. So most things I would have to ask my mother, since she has dealt with this longer than I have. That said, I would guess it is my mother who has that. I remember her very specifically saying that my aunt doesn't have anything like that. Her task was to simply take my grandmother to the doctor to get checked, since everyone else was working. Hospitals do not just admit healthy people for no reason, especially not during a pandemic. I think you are not getting the full story here about your grandmother's health. Multiple things come up. These are things to consider. Who is the power of attorney for her? If you don't have one specified for formal paperwork for this, it muddies up the water and hospitals often defer back to whoever is listed as next of kin in their system. To correct this, you would need to have a court hearing to establish POA for her. The hospital will shield any information from you if you are not POA or have the means to prove that you know about her medical information. Being family doesn't change anything. Many families refuse information to some members. Next, pandemic. Many hospitals are not allowing visitors regardless of the situation. Often make an exception for patients actively dying. You should clarify with the hospital before arriving to ensure that you aren't ushered off the property with security. My hospital is currently restricting visitors to none. You show up without prior authorization to, escorted off the premises by hospital police. Not all hospitals are restricting visitors, but many are. Check with the hospital to see what the protocol is. Next, taking her out of the facility. It would be going against the medical advice. You are essentially taking 100% responsibility for her care and outcome from the decision. Hospitals don't admit healthy people as one specified. A tube down the throat to provide substance is not uncommon. Tied to the bed, she's combative. She's probably delirious, and I can tell you now, as a healthcare provider, she will be delirious at home for a few days. Get yourself ready, she's highly likely to fight family members and get out of bed, potentially falling. But as I said, you decided to take her out against medical advice, so ultimately that's on you. Just some food for thought. Update. My grandmother got admitted to the hospital by my aunt without my mother's permission. Due to the pandemic, nobody can see her and currently she's not allowed to leave. She gets very paranoid when alone at the hospital. They currently have her tied down. She's 96 years old. Update. So, my aunt will not come to the hospital with my mother. My grandmother believes my mother is the one who put her there and has said she hates her. She does not want to go anywhere with anyone who would do this to her, she said. Because of that, they aren't allowing us to take her home. My mother in her grief signed papers taking full responsibility for this so she could get her home. They still would not allow it and her mental health is degrading further. To put in context, whenever she is in hospital for extended periods of time, especially alone, she believes someone has locked her away in an insane asylum and doesn't want to be there. Only happens at hospitals, nowhere else. Posted by user Garden Guard, titled, "Neighbor is purposefully trying to catch COVID from me by chasing me down every time I go to my yard, Ontario. Why is the weirdest shit always in Ontario? I was exposed to COVID-19 a few days ago and have been self-isolating since then. The health unit said I could still go in my yard to garden. A neighbor saw me outside and started talking from a distance. asking to borrow one of my garden tools, and I told her that it wasn't a good idea because I was exposed to COVID, and she started walking towards me, saying she wants to catch it and get it over with so she'll be immune. I dropped everything and ran inside, because I don't want to infect her, and watched from the window as she licked my tools. I'm not kidding. I sanitized them when I went to go get them. She's started running out toward me every time I go to water my garden. It's happened 4 times in a row now, and I don't know if I'll be held responsible if she catches it. I also know she has a toddler, and I think her parents come visit still sometimes. If it matters at all, I don't actually know if I have it. They won't test me unless I have symptoms, but I don't have symptoms. But my roommate had it, and I have to self-isolate 2 weeks from his last day of having it. Is there anything I can do about this? The only thing I can think of is have her trespassed, but she obviously won't listen to it. Call the police and let them know, and ask them to give her a warning about trespassing. If she keeps it up, having been warned will make it much easier for your local police to charge her with trespassing and possible harassment. If you reasonably fear she might make violent contact with you, that includes unwanted hugs. If any of you hug me and I don't want it, that's violent contact and I will sue you. They said they'd talk to her, and it's best if I just stay inside just in case. I contacted a Sane neighbor, and he said he'd water my garden for me. He doesn't have COVID, but he's laid off right now. He also suggested I call CPS because she's putting her toddler in danger. Should I just in case? That might scare her into stopping. You can speak to your children's aid or your province equivalent. Yeah. Someone's mother is trying to catch COVID-19 on purpose, and I'm worried it'll put their kid in danger. Maybe a low priority call, so don't pin your hopes on this, but you never know. I'm gonna call them. My other neighbor gave me the woman's name, so now they have more than just an address to use. Unrelated to my post, but I'm going to ask because you seem to know your stuff. If I plant something toxic to cats and a neighborhood cat eats it and gets sick, am I responsible? I use stuff to try to keep them away, but just in case it doesn't work, I wanted to know. Generally no, but it can depend on circumstance. A lot of it comes down to intent or negligence. Planting a rhododendron where your garden normally is would be reasonable and normal, and generally wouldn't create any additional liability if someone else's pet snacks on it and gets sick. However, planting a fringe of narcissus, flowers, or pothos or similar, precisely and only where you see your neighbor's cats going, would probably show some intent to harm the cat, and could create civil liability for the vet bills if the cat inevitably eats some of it. You may also want to check up on municipal bylaws regarding yard maintenance and plants. Most cities don't regulate to this level, but there are a few that do. Rue and lavender are fairly common plants that cats will generally avoid. That might be a better choice. I think I'm in the clear because I planted it, and then the cat showed up for the first time since February, but I'll plant some lavender around that particular plant to try to keep them away. Thanks for all your help. I have quite a few cats in a very large yard. I have all kinds of seriously deadly things planted. Monkhood, nightshade, belladonna, etc. And don't worry about the cats. Unless it's growing around something like catmint or catnip that cats will roll in or rub against, the cats are smart enough to ignore it. I've never heard of catmint before, so thanks for teaching me something new today. When dealing with the police, it might help to point out that her actions aren't just annoying, they are putting you at risk. She has been trying to catch COVID, probably from other places as well, so she is at high risk of having it. Now she is trying to get close enough to you to catch it, which puts you close enough to catch it from her. And also licking my tools, which I have a video of. Yes, I think so. That fact that she is willing to potentially be hospitalized for weeks and weeks and weeks, and maybe even die, shows that she's too unhinged to take care of her daughter. The part that's not helping is that my roommate had it, and it barely affected him, like he had a mild fever and his sense of taste dulled, but otherwise he was fine. So she's seeing that and thinking it'll be the same for her when it can be different from person to person. No one knows why it affects people differently, so she's an idiot, mentally ill, or both. COVID-19 has killed healthy 25-year-olds and let 75-year-olds with cancer walk out of the hospital. The majority odds that she won't be seriously harmed, so it's not insane to think that. However, the odds aren't 1 in a million of harm, it's more like 1 in 100 or 1 in 10. No one knows. I'm genuinely surprised my roommate didn't have it worse. Like, I fully expected it to land him in the hospital. Because of lack of testing, we really don't know who gets the mild version. One persuasive study I saw had 40% no symptoms or barely even recognizable as an illness, 40% noticeable symptoms, unpleasant, but recovers at home, 15% serious symptoms, requires hospitalization, a quarter of this group dies, 5% serious symptoms progressing to ARDS or multiple organ failure. Half of this group dies. He was in the first group. He had a mild fever and slightly dulled taste. I just expected him to end up in the hospital because his diet is so incredibly crappy and he constantly vapes. Like, 5 Alive is the only thing keeping him from getting scurvy. Hi OP. I don't know where you are in Ontario, but you can definitely report this person for not adhering to the physical distancing bylaws. If you're in Toronto, you can report non-compliance on toronto.ca. If you're not in Toronto, try to see if there's any info in your local government site to let you know how to report it, or you can call 311. I saw the number on the health unit site, but I was afraid I'd get in trouble if she got it from me. But I'll call. You're not intentionally trying to infect her. You're actively trying to prevent her from possibly catching it. I don't see a way you could get in trouble for trying to get crazy to stop. Report her ass to the police today. If she doesn't catch COVID-19, something else will certainly kill her, like the bacteria from licking fudging garden tools. To be fair, they were brand new when she did that. Like, I bought them and hadn't used them yet. Update to neighbor purposefully trying to catch COVID-19, Ontario. So I hadn't heard anything from the neighbor until this morning when her husband stuck something in my mailbox. So I talked to him through the window. He told me that he was contacted about her behavior while he was quarantined somewhere else because he was exposed to the virus and he got the health unit to make an exception to the no symptoms test, no test rule in the interest of the health of his wife and kids. The test came back negative 2 days later, so he went home to help her. She did have a mental breakdown. He didn't go into detail about it, but apparently she hadn't been handling the pandemic well and him being quarantined somewhere else made it worse. He asked me to delete the video because she saw me take it, and I did. I told him I understand that this has been very hard on people, and I had no hard feelings. He said he's going to look into counseling for her, and it turns out they go to the same clinic as me, so I recommended the counselor I use. Counseling is basically the same as therapy here. He had stuck an apology letter from her in the mailbox with a garden center gift card. I'm deleting this account so there won't be any replies from me, this time in best of legal advice. Stay safe, everyone. Bit by dog at work. I'm a package delivery driver and was bit while working by a 70-plus pound dog. Here's what happened. I pulled up to a delivery and both the dog and its owner were outside. When there's a dog outside, it has to be behind a fence or on a leash for us to get out of the van. I checked and the dog was laying down on a leash. The owner smiled and waved at me. I got out with the package and started jogging up to the house to deliver it. The dog looked at me and immediately started running towards me. The owner said, "Oh no," and I looked at her like, "What do you mean, oh no?" The dog's leash snapped without him even breaking stride, and he latched onto my ankle right at my Achilles. I don't remember if the dog ever let go, or if I pulled my ankle out of his mouth. But then he started lunging at me again, and I kept the package between us so he couldn't bite me again. The owner came over and put herself between us. Didn't grab his collar or anything, he just kept jumping in front of him every time he tried coming at me. This went on for a couple of minutes, as she is also nonchalantly asking me if I need first aid or any information, and complaining about how now she's going to have to chase the dog around the neighborhood. The dog started running big circles, and as soon as I felt there was enough distance for me to book it to the van, I took off. I ended up going to the hospital because my entire foot, ankle, and lower leg were pretty swollen. It was still bleeding off and on hours later, and I couldn't move my foot, let alone put weight on it. The doctor said I probably won't be able to put any weight on it for a week, so now I've just lost half my paycheck. I'm not really into suing people for no reason, but the fact that she said "oh no" before the dog did anything, and was so nonchalant about the whole thing, leads me to believe that this wasn't a surprise for her. I'm all for guard dogs, but I don't think having an aggressive dog with no "beware of dog" signs and not being in control of it is okay. Luckily, I'm 180 pounds with a good amount of muscle for a female, but what if it had been a child that was running in the neighborhood, and who's to say that won't happen again to another delivery person? I don't want the dog to be put down because I firmly believe 90% of the time a dog's behavior is based on the owner. I do think that the dog needs to be properly trained though, or given to someone else who can. Is there anything I can legally do to make that happen? Thanks in advance for the advice. Edit, I live in Illinois in the US. Edit 2, I don't know if it makes any difference, but the owner was who I was delivering to. I'm not sure about your local laws, but you need to make a claim with your work. I think I did. If giving a statement counts, I'm not sure. My boss said she'd take care of the report and call me if she needed any further info that I hadn't already told her. You need to make a claim at work and report the dog bite to animal control. Don't worry, not all dog report bites resort to the dog being put down. That makes me feel a lot better, and I was required to report the dog when I went to the hospital for them to treat me. Does giving a statement at work count as a claim? My boss knows about it and said she was going to fill out a report to give to higher-ups and that I should just worry about resting up. Thanks for the advice. I think it depends on the company. I had to fill out a form then hand to my boss, but it sounds about right. Everything you have done so far is correct. Have you discussed with anyone about paying for the treatment? Because the owner is liable in this case. The doctor said that workers' comp should cover it, but they took my insurance down just in case. I didn't have any plans to sue until I went to the hospital, and realized my boss would be paying for it. It's a very small, close-knit, family atmosphere type company, and I don't think it's fair that she has to pay for something that wasn't really her fault. Sad face. According to Amazon's policy, I did everything right, but my boss put a new rule in today for our company, saying that we need to call the customer from now on if there is any kind of dog outside, leashed or not. We aren't allowed to step out of the van now until the dog is behind a fence or inside. Also, I used the word sue, but I specifically mean the owner paying for medical costs. I think that's considered suing. I'm not well versed in law, sorry. Yes, that is suing, and it is the owner's fault. She did not control the dog, even leashed, she didn't properly control it. So is the next step contacting a lawyer who specializes in dog bites, or should I contact the owner first about it? You can contact the owner, and/or even file a claim with the homeowner's insurance. If that fails, then yes, get a lawyer. Did you call the police to report the dog attack? Then you ask the homeowner for their insurance. Also, if the dog was trained poorly, then there may be no hope to retrain it. If the police want to put it down, then you should not care. It is the crappy owner's fault and not your fault. You should also make a workman's comp claim. Give them all the info of the address and the owner that you have. I didn't even think about calling the police, to be honest. I was kind of hysterical and couldn't call until I was already safe back in the van. And I didn't get the owner's insurance or anything because the dog was still on the loose when I ran back into the van. Fight or flight kicked in and I just knew I needed to get away ASAP. I have the address still, so I could go back and get the rest of her info, but I really don't want to go back alone onto her property with that dog there. It might sound dumb, but that was actually really scary. With me being on crutches right now, there's no way I'm outrunning that dog if it slips out the door or something like that. You should call the police as soon as you can. You can go to the station, show them your injuries and medical reports, give them your address and what you remember. They will go there and talk to the people at the house. This is a very dangerous dog. You need to report it to the police. You can literally save a neighborhood child by getting the police involved. I was thinking about going to the police station tomorrow morning. I didn't want to do anything originally because I didn't want the dog put down. But then I thought about the owner's behavior and realized it was probably more of a when rather than if that dog bit anyone again. She was so casual during the whole thing. And now, update. I went to the station today and filed a report. The officer said he'd drop by the owner's house tomorrow morning to get her side of the story, then call me. Also, most of the pain is gone, luckily as long as I don't put weight on my foot. Not ideal, but progress. Our next post is titled, Ordered Delivery Last Night. Delivery boy stole a package on our property, which led to me finding out they added a debit card tip without authorization, which led to me finding out they've done it in the past as well. What do I do? Hi, location is Massachusetts. My family frequents a local wing franchise regularly. Last night, I ordered delivery, and when I opened the door, I noticed an Amazon package by the delivery boy's foot. It was white with blue letters on it and a shipping label. This was 9 p.m, so I made a strange face at the package, looked at it for a long moment, and as I looked at it, the delivery boy did too. I've never seen this delivery boy before, and he didn't say a word to me, just gave me my food without having me sign the receipt for it, and I gave him his $5 cash tip. The entire interaction was odd. I went inside to set the food down before going back to open the door and retrieve the package, but the package was gone. In the single minute I went to place my food in the house, the package disappeared. I live in a 3-family apartment. My aunt lives on the first floor. I told my mum to text my sleeping aunt if she was expecting a package because I think someone just stole it. I ate my food and went to sleep. I have the delivery boy's phone number. I went to check the online tracker to see if it had his name on it, and imagine my shock when I see a debit card tip added to my bill there, but not on any of my 3 receipts, after I already gave this punk a $5 tip. This led me to check my past delivery receipts on my email and compare them to my bank statements, only to find here and there that my total would be $14.28 on my receipts because I had not authorized a tip, but my bank shows they actually took $17.28. I never tip on a card, ever, only cash. My mum called my aunt this morning while she was at work and asked if she was expecting a package. She said yes. My uncle's Amazon account said he got a delivery at 8 p.m. last night, but he couldn't find the package when he got home. Now I have no idea what to do, but boy am I ticked. My uncle is friends with the bar right next to us, so we are going to see if their cameras caught the boy or his car. But otherwise, I don't know where to go with this. My uncle is still sleeping. When he wakes up, I will have to see what he wants to do, but I am livid that they are sneakily upcharging me. I have these photos showing all 3 of my receipts, saying my total is $18.02, but their website saying I added a $2.24 tip on card when I didn't. I know it's only a package and a couple of dollars here and there, but this isn't okay. What do I do? All of this happened on a debit card, not a credit card. Do I contact my bank? Do I contact the store? Do me and my uncle file police reports? Sorry if this is stupid, but I'm shaken up. Any advice helps. I would like to post these photos of my receipt on Facebook, maybe including the thief's phone number, explaining what happened, and telling everyone else to check their emailed receipts and bank statements too, if they've ordered from here. Is that illegal? Not a lawyer, but used to deliver pizza. Call the store and ask to speak to a store manager. If there's a corporate, I would opt to call corporate and tell them that there was a fraudulent tip added to your order. Then call the store and say there was a package on your porch last night when the driver was there and it went missing shortly after. You're getting a recording from your neighbor's security camera, but if the driver saw anything, it would be helpful for your police reports. You can then choose whether or not to file a police report on the card fraud or package. Corporate will run their investigation either way, and whoever is fraudulently tipping will be held accountable. Keep in mind though, the fraud appears to be the driver. I have seen managers add tips to drivers' orders and then take that because it's harder to pin them that way. Best of luck getting it all sorted out, and hopefully someone gives you some more legal standing on what to do. Restaurant manager here, and when we get that call, and we all get that call if it's a server, bartender, or delivery, every time anyone who handles money, cash, card, check, anything, they verify at the end of the shift. Those receipts get collected along with their signatures, verifying how much they made, tips claimed, etc. Those are stored either on site or sent to corporate and will be pulled to verify anything at a later point. That's when they will look at the handwriting to see if it matches, and will then look at other tips to see if it's more widespread. The most common is adding a 0 after a number if they are really cash desperate. A $2 tip becomes a $20 tip. Always write cash tip if leaving cash, but never leave that line blank if you can get your credit card involved if you really want crap to happen fast. A manager has better crap to do than to search and investigate for hours for theft. Edit, let me be clear when I say we have better crap to do. I mean that in the sense when we get that call, we know it's going to take all day, and we know 100% of the time it's true. So now that employee who you thought was honest, likable, trustworthy is a piece of crap, and now you have to piece together a puzzle which includes calling HR, pulling out old files, becoming a handwriting expert, calling a customer to confirm we stole your money, pulling up any video from that time if they ate in, going through other receipts that day, day before, day after, etc. Aussie Surfer Yo says, going forward, write none or cash tip in the tip line to protect yourself from future fraud. Good luck, not a lawyer. I do that, but he handed me both receipts and didn't take any for himself. Thank you. Wait, you have both the customer's copy and the business copy? Not sure how a delivery person would swing that. Sounds like a manager scheme. So maybe you just got targeted by 2 different people on the same night. Yes, I have both copies unsigned, both pictured in the photo. I thought it was incredibly weird too. The interaction was awkward because I was expecting him to have a pen and have me sign, but instead he just handed the food over. Double O Normal says, if this does all turn out to be shady doing, I'd change your card number. Your receipts say the number was keyed, meaning it was manually entered. Presumably you give it to them over the phone when you order? It's a pretty unsafe practice, and if there are shady folks working there, I wouldn't want them to possibly have a record of my card number. Good advice. I recently had to cancel my card and get a new one because I randomly got a parking charge in Miami, Florida. I've never been to Florida, nor do I even have my license yet. Could have been because of them. I type my card into the website when I order. If I pick it up in person, they still take my card and punch the numbers in themselves. They don't have a card reader. Contact law enforcement about the stolen package. Contact the store about the tips, explain what has happened, the evidence you have, and ask for them to pay back to you all that you can prove. You don't think I should mention to the store what happened with the package? Their delivery driver was on the clock. In a 1-minute span, he and the package were there, and then they weren't. This sucks. My uncle told me the package was something for his bike and has a tracker on it already, so he can actually track down where it is, so he says. But I will be calling them and corporate. First and foremost, report it to the restaurant that you purchased from. If they don't know, they can't do anything about it in the future. Allow them to make a choice to make it right if they so desire. You would be incredibly surprised to know that restaurants want to know when there is a problem. Honestly, your business in the future is completely at stake here, and they do want that. 1. Was it a delivery service like Uber Eats or any of the others, or was it the restaurant itself? This matters. 2. If it was a delivery service, contact them. They all have fairly decent customer service. Kid will likely be right out of a job that he probably needs. This is my first route if it was one of the bigger delivery services. 3. You have very little recourse on the package other than Amazon themselves. I wouldn't necessarily tell them the whole story, just that your stuff was gone. But that part is up to you. Amazon is pretty good about it too. 4. Last but not least, whomever this kid works for needs to be notified of his actions about the tip stuff. That is theft, and restaurants that are struggling simply won't tolerate that. No way, no how, not now, not ever. The package, sadly, is a whole different item and should be addressed with Amazon, and your uncle or aunt's credit card. Credit card companies have the ability to refund monies and often will. 5. You can file a police report on both items if you wish. And if you go with a credit card claim or your aunt/uncle, they would have to do this part. It might even be mandatory. I wouldn't expect to ever hear about it again from the police, however. They certainly have bigger fish to fry, but it might be mandatory for the refund on the Amazon package. At the very least, it puts this kid on the radar locally. You simply cannot be the only one he has done this to. No way, no how, not in any universe. You do you, good person, but make sure whoever employs the delivery driver knows of this. If they don't, they can't stop it in the future. And yes, it would be in your best interest to go to the bank and open a secured credit card, where you throw $500 in a bank and they issue a card. You miss a payment and they subtract it from that $500 and ding your credits. In about a year or two, they will release your $500 and you will have a credit card. Use the card for dining out and buying items online only. Never use the full amount, but be regular with its use. Don't miss or be late on a payment, and in a little while you will have credits. Credit cards protect you about 2,000% better than debit for purchases. Just an FYI. Good luck. Update: delivery driver theft. It was handled professionally. Hi everyone, I cannot believe how much that post blew up. That was never my intention for it to get to the front page or to negatively affect anybody but the thief. That thief doesn't represent the entire company and has now been fired. My inbox has absolutely exploded, and I will respond to everyone when I get the chance. But this whole situation has made me feel really sick, anxious, and I have a splitting headache. In the moment that I posted it, I was extremely angry and hurt. I worked very, very hard for my money, and on Tuesday I will be paying $900 plus for my senior cat to have a dental surgery. This guy taking money out of my pocket was taking food out of my cat's mouth after I had already given a 25% plus cash tip. And who knows how many people he's done this to. I couldn't, and still can't, believe someone would be stupid enough to steal from someone who knows their phone number, place of work, and knows what they look like. Especially when I was already generous. It literally doesn't feel real. I don't know why this guy decided to make such a choice. The only reason I posted here was because I had no idea what to do or where to start. Thank you to everyone who offered me advice and insight. Anyways, I contacted corporate, and then contacted the location themselves. The manager was very kind to me, and he seemed understanding and more than reasonable. I'm very thankful he was working there today and helped me out. Dude deserves a raise for handling this situation so well. Corporate expressed that they were horrified and would make it right. Shortly after talking to them, the restaurant called me back to tell me the punk confessed to fraud and inputting his own tip. They will now be launching an investigation, and he was immediately fired. They offered me $100 credits and gave me refunds for the 2 meals that had fraudulent charges on them. I am happy with the way the company has handled this, but I think they need to make some big changes as to their receipt layout, etc., and hope they do. After that, the owner of the location contacted me and apologized. He even offered to compensate for the cost of the package, which I would say is pretty above and beyond. As for the package, I don't know what my uncle's plan is. It's his call. I thought I would never be able to eat from this place again, which would have been pretty devastating. I didn't think this idiot's actions could be excused, but the company has been very reasonable and apologetic. They responded very swiftly and took this seriously. I think that's worth everybody noting. It has been dealt with, so I don't feel as if I have to avoid them, and you shouldn't either. I don't feel like they have just blown this off. This could happen anywhere. Just make sure you hold people accountable. My advice to everyone else is, save your emails, compare your receipts to your bank statements every so often, and don't let anyone get away with screwing you over. $2.24 wasn't going to make or break me, but it's $2.24 I worked for and am entitled to. $2.24 was powerful enough this guy was willing to lose his job and his girlfriend over. Know your worth, know your money's worth, and I sincerely hope this guy thinks about his actions and finds the right path for him soon. And our next post is by user Jade Green Leaves, titled, I saw some boys brutally torturing and killing wild turtles while fishing. How do I report this? On a fishing trip, I encountered some boys capturing turtles for the purpose of killing them in slow, sadistic ways. They were enjoying the torture and had no other reason to catch them. For the future, what would be the best way to report and stop this? Can I call 911, or is there a better hotline to dial? Animal cruelty makes me sick, and I would like to have legitimate legal means to stop the torture should I encounter a similar situation again. Thanks in advance. Edit, this happened in rural Oklahoma. Edit 2, okay, I'm going to file a report after all. I was under the guise that there wasn't anything that I could do, but I see that isn't true. Hopefully, I have enough info to get these punks tracked down. Thanks everyone for your help, I really appreciate it. Contact your local US Fish and Wildlife Office. They have a law enforcement division specifically for these types of issues. Thank you. I wasn't sure if there was someone I could call that would immediately put an end to the situation. We'll definitely call the game warden next time. Don't wait until next time. This should be reported immediately and will be taken seriously. Please call and report. Wildlife LEO is typically excellent at pursuing charges. Not something you wait until next time for. Report it ASAP and save the lives of some innocent creatures, and possibly humans down the line when these boys get a psych evaluation. Another thing worth mentioning is that sadistic torture of animals can be an exploratory precursor to worse things done against both other animals as well as humans. Reporting these boys might be what gets them the help they need, or at least gets them into the system where patterns of behavior could later be identified. I work for FWS, but I'm commenting as a private citizen, and this is absolutely the right move. Contact the nearest office and ask for a law enforcement officer. They will either have a refuge officer, if you call a national wildlife refuge, or a special agent that you can talk to. At the very least, the officer can take your statement to have on file so they can build a case if this happens again, and if the people are ever identified. If you see it again, then please call the officer right away, or at least write down some identifying info, like license plate, description of the people/vehicle, etc. Officers could also collect evidence from the animal after they leave it. Wildlife-related crimes are serious to the people who work in FWS, so it's unlikely they will ignore your call. Contact a game warden via Fish and Wildlife. There is no one a game warden hates more than someone who tortures wildlife. It will be taken seriously. I didn't even think of that. We'll certainly do that next time. You can still report it and still do. Torturing animals is not hunting. It's a small step from torturing animals to torturing people. Please report this. Sadly, I was too stunned to think about collecting names or descriptions. Their clothing/appearance could have been anyone else at the lake. I wish I would have thought of reporting at the time, but the attitude around here is very much boys will be boys. I was afraid the cops wouldn't take killing a few turtles seriously. But I will definitely call and report next time. The game warden shouldn't tolerate that sort of thing. Hope you'll report the incident. Place, time, and descriptions can help them know where to keep an extra eye out, and who or what to look for. They'll also be able to look for any injured animals. Unfortunately, the thought of taking legal action didn't hit me until after the fact. The boys were certainly minors, and animal abuse of this type is unfortunately very common around lake areas. I felt powerless to stop it other than yelling at them, which only seemed to encourage them further. Unless we're talking years, you should still report it for the reasons stated above. I understand. I'm just not sure I collected enough information for the police to work with. If I had a name or license plate number that could identify them, I definitely would. I think it's too late to find them. Or is the vague info I have enough to file a report? File it with what you have. Just file it. It creates a paper trail, which may be helpful to someone down the road. And now, update. I talked to an officer and he said that they didn't consider it animal abuse if it wasn't a domestic animal in question. He said the local lake patrol was unlikely to do much about it, but I could try to report it anyway. Update 2. I have reported the incident and given my description of the boys. I've done all I can do. It's in their hands now. Thank you to everyone who gave advice. My question has been answered. Neighbor bolts large invoice billboard to his garage, declaring we owe him money that we do not owe him. I moved into a lovely subdivision in the gorgeous North Carolina mountains last year. The neighborhood has 13 homes built in the mid-1970s on a private road with no HOA. My next-door neighbors are a very tidy and fastidious couple of retired folks who moved here many years ago. They are always outside putzing around, tidying not only their property, but also all the common areas. It is a daily job to them, and they take it very seriously. These common areas are fine as they are, but the very tidy couple prefers a very manicured look to all things. That's mostly harmless, so the rest of the residents just shrug it off as their harmless neurotic behavior. Extra daffodils on the road are nice, but I'm not asking for them. We have privately chuckled over their excess of free time and their desire to be seen as the mayors of the neighborhood. Until a couple months after we lived here, Mr. Tidy decided he'd had enough of the pothole in the shared road and unilaterally signed a contract with a paving company for over $20,000. He paid them. He was taken advantage of by these pavers. They overcharged and underperformed. But the neighbor was the only one involved, and as we saw the work being done, we figured this was just one of the mayor's wild plans, and even if the work was shoddy, it wasn't worse than it started. He did not discuss or ask for consent from any of us prior to his contracting with the paving company. Later that week, he delivered invoices to all the other residents for their share. My husband gave him what we could and what seemed appropriate, which was $300 of the $1,700 he asked from every neighbor. I would have declined to offer anything because I do not wish to set a precedent with an overstepper. This was less than he wanted, and he has been escalating his attempts to collect on his false debt that only exists in his mind. Last week, he spray painted the private road we live on with "You owe 1313, and this morning, he erected a large painted billboard that says, "You owe $1,313 for road repair" on his home facing my home. He bolted this massive sign onto his siding, damaging his own home in order to make that statement. This sign is in clear view of anyone on the street, and clearly implies that we owe this man money that we do not owe him. What recourse and protection does the law provide? I feel bullied, and I do not cave into bullies' demands because they just keep coming back if you do. This is distressing and embarrassing though. It's the first thing my children see when they wake up, and it's definitely interfering with our lives and our ability to enjoy our own home. I had to explain why it was there to the guys we hired to take care of a tree that fell in the last week's storms. I don't want to have to explain this story to anyone else. I would very much like for this couple to just leave me and my family alone. Depending on where you're located, the billboard might not follow local zoning or building codes. You could check and report them to code enforcement if that is the case. We're just outside city limits, and based on what I see around me in other neighborhoods, there's a lot of leeway with how one presents their property around here. It's wildly ironic that these anxiously tidy people erected an eyesore in an otherwise gorgeous community. They are definitely in their feelings about it. Okay, still check with the city and county. If you're really close to the city, you might be in their extraterritorial jurisdiction, and they might still have some powers. You should never have given him the $300. It gives validity to his claim that you owe debt. That part made me literally facepalm. When someone confronts you with an obviously bullcrap claim that you owe them money, the correct response is not to actually give that person money. I guess an exception would be if violence were threatened or something, but then that would be robbery. I'm not a litigator, but I'd imagine that if something like this ever went to trial or whatnot, opposing counsel would have a field day with that little tidbit. I'm not sure it complicated things, but there is nothing wrong with a neighbor gifting another neighbor $300 as a thank you for the obviously expensive road repairs that everybody benefits from. Doing so doesn't mean that you're agreeing to some imaginary larger amount those people think you owe them. That's a position that might, in good faith, be taken by a reasonable person. I happen to disagree, especially since he gave him the money after getting the invoice. But I can still see what you're saying. Unfortunately, I'm talking about what a lawyer, not a reasonable person, would make of the situation. I am a lawyer, some of us like the occasional lawyer joke. I doubt this would ever get that far, but I'm just imagining OP being deposed and having to answer loaded questions like, why did you only pay him part of what you owed? And you say you didn't owe him anything, but you also say you paid him $300. Why can't you keep your story straight? Again, I'm not a litigator, just trying to explain why I cringed when I say that part about the $300. Even if it was just a good faith gesture, my sense is that it could absolutely be used as ammunition by the neighbor. Yeah, not saying it couldn't be used as ammunition, just that there isn't any legal grounds there. He's not agreeing to any debts regardless of what was presented to him before paying the $300. It would be up to the neighbor to prove in court OP agreed to this debt, and simply providing the $300 does not do that. The answer to the hypothetical question you presented is, I didn't owe him anything. I gave him the $300 because he spent a large amount of his own money on road repairs that me and other neighbors benefited from, and it was something I didn't mind doing to help out. It absolutely opens up a can of worms, but it isn't a can that is difficult to close again, like some other legal things may be. For what it's worth, I cringed too, for very much the same reason, so I'm not even sure why I'm arguing this point here, lol. And now OP replies to the original one about the cringing. I agree with you. I lost my ever-living crap at my husband when he said he did that. I do, however, acknowledge that a person who does not think legally and instead thinks neighborly could make that mistake. He was trying to placate this guy, which I knew was unlikely without fully acquiescing. With a normal person, you can meet them in compromise, and that is what he was hoping for. He now knows we do not negotiate with terrorists. And the last Faposaurus says, generally the best advice is to not pay anything, and that is true here as well. That said, there is no magical principle out there that says that partial payment of an alleged debt renders the entirety of the claimed debt valid. That argument would typically be employed by someone claiming the debt arose from an oral contract. If the mayor here claims that the debt arose solely because the mayor arranged for work, which benefited OP, but acknowledges that there was an explicit agreement that OP was going to chip in for it, the partial payment doesn't really help the mayor. In the time since the billboard was put up, we've discovered that he's been running a shakedown campaign on others too. No one is a fan. It seems his hope to shine light on the neighborhood a-hole worked, but not like he'd hoped. Winky face. If we wind up in court, we won't be alone. On its face, this sounds like a classic nuisance situation. The sign is, as you say, interfering with our lives and our ability to enjoy our own home, and it sounds like it was erected solely for that purpose. The case law on spite fences, although not directly applicable in your case, may be of interest. A knowledgeable North Carolina attorney could give you a better idea of where you stand on both the sign and the alleged debt. On the other hand, anything beyond a consultation and perhaps a nastygram is likely to cost you a lot more than the disputed amount. Thank you for your response. The lawyers I spoke with today all referenced the hate and spite fences you linked. I'm seeing one tomorrow morning. I'm happy to pay him as much, if not more than, the debt my neighbor thinks I owe him. I could either struggle to pay a lawyer or struggle to pay my crazy neighbors, and I suspect the lawyer will be a better investment. Sorry there's so many comments in this one, but these are all really good comments, so I'm not sorry as well. For everyone saying that the 300 ruins any case you have in court, no, it doesn't. You have an explanation for why you paid 300. You'll be permitted to present that explanation if the payment comes up. It's only a piece of evidence for which you have no controverting evidence. It doesn't help you, but by no means is it damning. Some people may be confusing this with reviving a time-barred debt by making a payment on it. If you owed company money, but they were prohibited from suing you to collect on the debt by the statute of limitations, I said it right, it's statute, not statute. In some jurisdictions, you can restart the clock on the statute by making a payment. But that's not the case here, since we're all presuming you bore no liability for the debt in the first instance. It's possible that your particular jurisdiction creates liability for a debt if you make any payments on it, although I doubt it, and that isn't the case in Texas. So consulting an attorney is of course the best action. It is actually likely that all the users of a private road bear joint costs for its maintenance. There are loads of fact-specific questions and jurisdiction-specific laws that would need to be properly evaluated. So you should basically disregard everything everyone says except this. Trust your local attorney, not us. And OP says, thank you. It's been a pretty exhausting day with this, and although I don't let internet strangers wreck my day, it is disheartening to have my husband's actions judged as stupid instead of recognized as him trying to be a cooperative neighbor in a new place where the rules weren't exactly clear and keeping the peace seemed wise. Here's an update, probably not the one that you want, but it's an update nonetheless, by Snosberry Wallpaper. An update and questions regarding yesterday's billboard neighbor dispute. Criminal law. Yesterday, I posted about my next-door neighbor putting up a billboard accusing me of owing him money. That post is locked, but I have new questions now that I've spoken to an attorney and the police. The attorney advised that I do have grounds to sue, but also advised that the cost to pursue that option would be substantial. As we talked, and he heard more of the story, he raised his eyebrows up and told me that this sounds more and more like a criminal case for extortion or blackmail. He encouraged me to call and start an incident report with the local sheriff. He also encouraged me to pursue a no-contact order through the courts. I did call the sheriff's department to create an incident report, and they took my statement over the phone, COVID-19 protocols, and then sent a marked car to collect photo evidence. The deputy stopped her car, took pictures, gave me a wave through the window, then left. I've looked up the statutes in North Carolina for extortion and blackmail, 14-118.4, and just 14-118. And with my not a lawyer eyes, it does seem his actions satisfy the law's requirements for both. I have no real experience with the criminal justice system, besides having a credit card stolen when I lived in MD, and in that experience, I did not receive much help or support from the police. My questions are, what happens now? Do I wait to hear back from the sheriffs, or do I need to be the one calling them to follow up on things? I don't want to annoy them, but I also do want this to be handled with some degree of expediency. Would it be smart or stupid to go to the other neighbors he's been shaking down to let them know there's now police involvement if they'd like to also share their story? In the experience of others who've been seeing anything like this play out, do crazy bullies like him usually turn it down and act right after just a formal conversation with police that they're doing something illegal and they need to stop? Or does it seem more likely that I will need to push for charges that will cause him to need to hire a defense attorney, etc., if I want this situation to be a done deal permanently? I do not want a lengthy feud. I just want him to leave me and my family in peace going forward. If there's an obvious question I'm not asking, I would appreciate any other advice that pertains to. For the people from yesterday who were concerned that paying him $300 would complicate things, it has not. The invoice/letter that the mayor delivered to us last year clearly stated that he hired and paid for the road repairs without consulting anyone, but that he thinks it's our duty to pay him regardless. His own letter entirely backs my story completely. So it's been a month since this post, and unfortunately there is not a further update. When there is, I will give us another update. But for now, I'll just read out everything that the OP replied to in the comments, so we can get as much information as possible. I would give the sheriff a bit to do their thing before calling them. Certainly, I would also let others who feel like they have been blackmailed or extorted by your neighbor to also report it to the sheriff, as it's much more likely for something to be done the more folks complain. I'd also expect your further relationship with your neighbor to sour, and I would consider outside cameras to record if he does anything else shady. It sounds like he may be neat and clean to the point of compulsion, and who knows what other nonsense he could pull. The sheriff's deputy encouraged us to put up cameras and hang "No trespassing" signs ASAP too. The general consensus amongst the lawyers and the LEO was that until there's some resolution, I should stay vigilant and be prepared in case he becomes more unglued. That's a nice word. Cameras are very cheap. Frankly, they needed to go up yesterday. What they capture is going to be evidence against your neighbor. Consider it a small investment, if anything. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm curious if you have a claim against the shady asphalt contractors. They did work on property without the permission of all the owners. That is a very valid point, and one I had not thought of. While the roadwork was actually happening, we didn't care. Like I said in the other post, the work was no worse than the patches put down by old residents, so there was no need for me to complain. When I found out I was going to be asked to financially contribute, and I found out how much he paid them, I was shocked by how little work they did for how much money they charged him. I'm curious now too, though I really don't want to turn this into a bigger situation than I already have. I really just want this bully to get put back into his place forcefully enough that he doesn't ever try harassing us again, ever. And to the original one, they say it depends on who legally is actually responsible for the upkeeping of the road, which is likely a whole other thread on this sub, given the neighbor's activities, lol. All the homeowners own are responsible for the road and its upkeep. There's never been an outside contractor brought in to do work on it since it was built. But in this area, that's not unusual. There's loads of roads in the mountains that are made entirely of gravel, dirt, and potholes. By comparison, our old paved road with one pothole was pretty cosmopolitan. Right. And along with who was responsible, were those responsible consulted and gave agreements, or did the rogue snickety neighbor make the call all on their own? Rogue Mayor did it all on his own and informed us after the fact. He knew he overstepped because he typed out a letter on the back of the invoices and gave all of us in the letter he brought up with that he'd like an additional $13,000 of road work to be done, but that he'd like everyone to agree to that first. By the way, make sure to memorialize everything. Date, time, pics, notes, and names, everything. For sure. I have a file going and am keeping copious notes. And our last comment for this one by Why You Know That. I would call and check in with law enforcement weekly until the billboard comes down. Hopefully you have an officer's name that is assigned to the case. Once the billboard is removed, you can probably stop calling. My guess, based only on my experience in a faraway state, is that charges for something like this may or may not actually be brought. Law enforcement will certainly contact Mayor and probably present all the evidence and give him a chance to take it down. Once Mayor realizes he's an idiot and subject to criminal charges, I'm guessing it will resolve itself pretty damn quickly. If not, criminal charges get filed. In the meantime, hell yes, I'd reach out to the other neighbors. Is he also harassing them? I don't think your original post mentioned if other neighbors paid the full amount or if he's also harassing them, but additional proof of this behavior will only strengthen the potential criminal case and again be very strong leverage for Mayor to take down his sign and quit being a jerk. OP did not respond to that one, but I happily await the update to this one. It might be a year from now. These things take a long time, but I'll definitely cover it when they put up an update. MD. I think my dead son's boss might have contributed to his death, but nobody will listen to me. My son was never a good kid. From very young, he pushed boundaries with everyone and got really into drugs and alcohol. I'm saying this because it explains a lot. He first started using heroin when he was 15. According to him, he basically got addicted immediately. But when he was 19, after being kicked out of the house, arrested a couple of times, he came to us and finally asked for help. He eventually got clean and stayed clean for a little over a year, was starting to put together a life. He got his first job at age 20. It was a busser at a local restaurant. Though he was very excited at first, eventually it became clear this was a toxic environment. One of the owners, who I will call Sarah, took a particular dislike to my son. She would call him and the other busser with a similar backstory, 1+ year sober addict, the junkies, to their faces. She would steal shifts from my son because he didn't come in wearing the logoed shirt for the restaurant, but rather a very similar black polo without the logo. This was common practice for other employees, as they were only given one uniform shirt and nobody seemed to have any issue with that. After 4 months of working there, I wake up late one night to find him overdosing on our couch and he dies. Mind you, he had been clean for a month over a year at this point and seemed like he was happy with that, so I was in shock. Anyway, as for my legal question, a month ago, around a month and a half after his death, a woman who introduced herself as a manager/bartender at the place he had worked knocked on my door and said she wanted to show me a video. She explained that she had been worried about how Sarah treated son for a while, so on the day my son died, when Sarah started to pick a fight with him, she secretly recorded it on her phone. The video shows Sarah drunkenly screaming at my son as he tries to do his job. She is telling him that he is a waste of time and space and should just, okay, I'm not going to say that, taunting him and asking him if he's going back to sticking a needle into his arm yet so she can fire him. She even takes a swing at him. Mind you, this is in the middle of dinner service and in front of customers. I strongly suspect that this is what triggered his relapse, and what I suspect was more a suicide than a simple relapse. My question is, if I have any legal recourse against the restaurant based on their treatment of my son. The other manager that gave me the video also said that she could probably find some people who witnessed other similar incidents. But the thing is that anyone I bring this up with in my small town just laughs and blows it off. When I brought it to the local lawyer, his exact words were, "Well, he was a frickin' junkie. You want to sue the only people who were stupid enough to hire him?" I know that he was seriously mistreated, and worse than that, from what the restaurant manager implied, it sounds like the restaurant may be knowingly targeting heroin users and/or ex-users, using them for a few months until they either get tired of the bullcrap or relapse, and then firing them for a new round of the same. What did I just read? I'm actually in shock over that. That's disgusting if that is real and did happen. My God. While you may be out of luck on legal recourse, I'm sure higher-ups at the restaurant would be interested in this video. You may not be able to get her in legal trouble, but you can almost certainly get her fired. The way she speaks to employees is abusive and completely unprofessional. I'm so sorry about your son. I'd want this woman locked up if I were you too. Is there any possibility for a civil suit in this scenario? Harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, wrongful death, etc. The problem is going to be tying the actions of Sarah to the son's decision to use drugs. The fact of the matter is, addicts don't need a reason to relapse besides addiction. Relapses happen all the time without any outside influence. Staying clean is simply very hard, and it's going to be next to impossible to show that a single action from earlier that day directly led to the relapse. Because quite frankly, it might not have. OP is assuming they are casually tied because that's sort of what the human brain does, especially when grieving. The son may not have cared at all what Sarah thought. The relapse could have been triggered by something completely unrelated, running into an old friend, hearing an old song on the radio that reminded him of using, or even possibly the fact that he didn't react to Sarah making him feel more in control than he was, and believing that he moved past his addiction and can now use casually. Objectively, there is little to no evidence linking the two events together. They simply happened on the same day. But hell, we don't even know that this was something the son decided on that day. He could have been thinking about relapsing for weeks, bought the drugs earlier, and it just so happened that this is the day he used them. In fact, it's even possible that he had relapsed earlier and it went unnoticed. The cat guardian says, "I'm very sorry about your son, but I don't think you're going to have any legal recourse here. What she did was generally not illegal, except for her hitting him. You can report the assault to the police. You could also let her boss know about her behavior, and they may choose to fire her over it. The unfortunate reality of addicts is that suicides and relapses are common, and it would be exceedingly difficult to show that her actions even impacted his decision. In addition, a large chunk of accidental overdoses happen in just this sort of situation, when a long-term addict relapses after being clean for a substantial period of time. In absence of any evidence of suicide, it is far more likely that the son simply miscalculated or forgot that his tolerance to the drug was significantly decreased, and accidentally administered a fatal dose to himself. Not to mention, fentanyl has been getting laced with a lot of drugs lately as well. Not saying that could be a factor, but without seeing toxicology reports, who really knows? I'm sorry for your loss. If she took a swing at your son, that was technically assault and can be reported to the police. However, as the crime victim is now dead, the police may not even be interested in pursuing anything. While this sounds like a very bad and exploitative work environment, none of the behavior other than the possible assault sounds illegal to me. You may want to talk to an attorney about the civil side of things, but I'm not highly optimistic about your chances of a lawsuit. Do bullying and inciting to suicide laws not apply to adults? If she repeatedly called him trash and told him to commit suicide, I would think that case would at least make it to a trial. I am not a lawyer. Edit, this would require the fatal dose to have been large enough that it was a suicide, and that the stuff it was what he meant to buy, not knowingly full of fentanyl or something. And I think I'm gonna leave that one there. Obviously there's not gonna be an update for this one, and I think we have to respect OP's decision for that. This is kind of more of a like, hey, if you guys are faced with a situation like this, here's some advice, this is legal advice, and these are maybe things you could do if in one day you need the advice, basically. My 29 female husband, 32 male, served me with divorce papers last night and has been cheating on me for our whole 10-year relationship. Hi everyone, using a throwaway account because I know some of my friends follow here and know my username. So basically, like the title says, my husband has been cheating on me for our whole relationship of 10 plus years, and served me with divorce papers during quarantine. He wants me out of the apartment by next Friday, but I am too embarrassed to tell my family. In my culture, no one gets a divorce, and I don't know where to start. I know I need to get a lawyer, but I'm completely confused and blindsided right now, and would like advice before contacting a lawyer so I don't look as clueless as I am. He's being completely irrational, and doesn't want me to have anything. Not the furniture in the house, the food in the fridge, or our dog. I'm hoping someone can help me out with the most important things below. First, we don't have a prenup. I met him when I was 19, and he had opened up his first restaurant in the city. I really thought we'd grow old together. I know, stupid of me not to cover my ass, but I was with him for so long that I got really comfortable and couldn't imagine him doing this. We bought a condo in New York, and most of it was paid for by me and my family, but it is in his name. I'm scared of losing the house since my parents and I put so much into it, but I also can't afford to keep the house on my own for more than a few months, I guess, unless I ask my parents for help, which I'm also embarrassed to ask for. Can his infidelity help me out here? Second, he bought me a car for my birthday just last year, and is telling me I have to leave the car with him, so I have no way of moving any of my stuff out and would put myself at great risk of getting COVID-19. Is he allowed to do this? Third, I am a co-signer on 2 of the small loans that he has on his restaurants. I'm also invested in them, and they're a great second source of income, even in these times. How will the judge, or whoever ultimately makes the decision, determine whether or not I can maybe keep one of the restaurants or still collect revenue on them? Again, no prenup and my husband was unfaithful. I'd love to hear your advice. Any bit helps right now. The only answer here is to speak to an attorney immediately and don't sign anything. Act fast. Call a few attorneys to ask for a consultation. They will give you advice on how to handle your divorce going forward. Don't make any financial moves, such as removing money from the account, until you've spoken to your attorney. If you want to be proactive, I agree you need your own bank account. Set that up, and when the attorney tells you to move money, do it. You don't need a private investigator. He's having an affair, and it's not going to help much unless he has used a large portion of your marital assets to have that affair. Your attorney will handle getting a forensic accountant to make sure he's not hiding money. Because you probably have a lot of cash going through the restaurants, you will probably need one. Also, there is no shame getting a divorce. I understand there is a cultural issue at hand, but divorces happen all the time. His a-hole actions trying to strong-arm you into leaving your home and your car speak volumes. You don't have to leave the home, and if you feel unsafe, call the police immediately. To echo what others have said, I understand that you're feeling foolish right now, but be fair to yourself. Most people don't prepare for a divorce when they're not the one initiating it. So when you call the divorce lawyer, they won't think you're foolish for not knowing what to do. That's why there are divorce lawyers. Your husband is banking on you not knowing what to do and being too timid to assert yourself in this situation because of your legitimate fears about how your family will react. Get a lawyer, go for the throat, and don't look back. Good luck, and I'm really sorry this is happening to you. He can't decide what he wants to keep and when you have to leave your home. I went through a divorce a few years ago, and in my state, anything that was purchased or earned while the 2 of you was married is a joint asset. You are entitled to half the car, half the home, half of the bank account, half of his retirement account. He's entitled to half of yours too. And if he bought a business after you were married, that's a marital asset, and you're entitled to half of that too. My advice is do not move out yet. In my state, lawyers told me to not move out until we had a signed separation agreement. If I were to move out before that, it would look like I instigated the divorce and could negatively affect child custody and alimony. Right now is an emotionally charged time, but you need to talk to a lawyer ASAP to protect yourself financially. My ex wiped out our joint savings account before we had a separation agreement. It had a few $1,000s in it. My lawyer said I could take him to court for it, but by the time I paid his $250 an hour legal fees, any money I'd get from the ex, I would have to pay to the lawyer, so I just let it go. I talked to a lawyer within a week of my ex walking out, and I was an emotional wreck. But he was able to advise me on what to do/not, so to protect myself, and get the best outcome for me. Don't assume your ex will play nicely. Divorces usually end up getting heated when it comes to dividing assets. Do not sign anything he gives you now. Do not leave your home unless you feel safe. Do not give up your car or anything else. Get a notebook, or take notes in your phone, and start documenting everything with dates, times, and quotes of what he says. Start gathering your financial documents. A lawyer will need all of them. But honestly, the best thing you can do for yourself for the long term is lawyer up. I'm so sorry you're going through this. My ex was an alcoholic cheater. I met him when I was 18, young and naive. I'm a few years out from my divorce, but I'm so much happier not being with a cheater, and you'll be happy again too. I didn't realize how much I was settling by being with my ex. He treated me like crap, and I would just think, well, this is how my life is. I didn't think I deserved any better. You deserve better than what he's done to you by lying and cheating for your whole 10-year relationship. Good luck with everything. On top of the other advice here, get a copy of all bank statements in order so he doesn't try to move money sneakily. Maybe go over them as well if he's already been doing this. Move half of any joint accounts. Document and keep records for lawyers so you have access to money for legal costs. Do not sign anything and don't move out. If he starts forcing you out, call the cops. Also, collect every piece of evidence you have that your husband was cheating. Texts, emails, letters, etc. You said he was cheating the whole time. You need proof. This information will help your case as much as possible. If you have any physical proof, take pictures of them, scan them, or if you can store them in a different location, that would be best, so he can't throw them out. I know you're embarrassed by all of this, but now is not the time to let a sense of pride get in the way of protecting yourself. Reach out to your family, because they are there for you. Do not let him have everything because you feel bad that he cheated on you. He's trying to blame and guilt you into giving him everything you two have spent your lives on. But you should lawyer up and fight for everything you can. You said he was cheating the whole time. You need proof. This information will help your case as much as possible. Can you elaborate on why it would help? The person you responded to said cheating doesn't really matter anymore in terms of asset splits, and it's generally 50-50 either way. What do you think would be different with the proof? History of infidelity could show that a significant amount of funds were going towards the infidelities instead of being invested in the family. It depends on the lawyers and judges, but a long history of cheating can have more impact than the 50-50 split. If someone cheated for the last month, then it probably had no effect in the court, but 10 years of cheating will be damaging against him. I am not a lawyer. Also, New York is a one-party consent state. Start recording every conversation you have with him about anything dealing with the divorce. It depends on your state and your judge. In my jurisdiction with my most common judges, infidelity and marital misconduct can move a 50-50 distribution to like a 60-40 or so with a lot of effort. Infidelity does matter in many states. I am not a lawyer. On top of everything, tell your parents ASAP, especially if you know they may have more resources or a trusted lawyer. You are hurt and overwhelmed. If they are supportive and you have a good relationship with them, they'll help you keep focused, and you need every ounce of support you can get. Document everything, save all your important documents, and build your support structure. Your husband blindsided you and was probably hoping you'll be too ashamed/in shock to react. You need an attorney and people in your corner. If your parents invested too, they'll definitely deserve the chance to fight for what is theirs. Update. I, 29 female, was served with divorce papers by my husband during quarantine. Hey everyone, I'm back. I wanted to come back with a little update because I'm wine tipsy right now, and why the hell not? These past couple weeks have been a roller coaster of emotions. Some bad, but mostly good. Now that things in New York are starting to look a bit more promising, my attitude towards the situation and my mental state are in a much different place than they were a few weeks ago. I mentioned this before, but I want to say it again. Thank you for your messages, for sharing your stories, and for the amazing advice given by strangers. It means so much, especially at a very hard time. As I mentioned in my last post, my ex-husband had been cheating on me for our whole 10+ year relationship. 3 years were marriage, with multiple women, and served me with divorce papers during the peak of the COVID curve here in New York City. He wanted me out, and he wanted everything, even things that were not his. We have not talked since April 27th, and is solely communicating through lawyers. He has moved into the back office of one of the restaurants that he owns. Yes, you heard that right, and spends his time between his restaurants and the new chick's house. His parents begged and pleaded with me to get back with him in a phone call on May 3rd, but that will never happen. Here's an update. Legally, the apartment is, most likely, going to be given to me. His lawyer agreed that this very well might be the case, though I know they're going to try to fight me until they can't anymore, given that there are bank statements/documents showing that majority was paid for by my family. If this isn't the case, it will be 50-50. Either way, I do plan on moving to a smaller place in a different neighborhood and don't really care for the apartment the same way I did. What I once saw as a place where we would raise a family has now become a somewhat empty museum to me. As long as his new missus isn't living the life I once did, I don't care which way we go with it. I last spoke about him wanting to take the car from me. The car is mine until the judge determines what to do with it. My name is on the title, and though he is making the payments, it is mine, and I can't really imagine why I need a $100,000 car to sit on the street and accumulate tickets daily. So while it's mine for now, I honestly can't afford the maintenance on it, and I live in New York City, so free car, for now. Thankfully, he's not going to fight me for the custody of our beloved pup. The most important factor in all of this, she's mine. The restaurant. So, I just spoke about my partial ownership in one of the restaurants. I've decided to sell it back to him. I think it's best to cut ties to him, and getting a check every 2 weeks in the mail with his signature on it, with a post-it, with a penis drawn on it, has made me resent him even more. So I'm going to sell my percentage back to him, or whoever wants to invest. I'll put that money towards a car I can afford on my own, or my new place, etc. A lot of people were telling me to get checked for STDs, and I took your advice and headed over to the Planned Parenthood. All is well in that department. Now, on to my family, which I was terrified to say anything to. They have been so supportive, my rocks through all of this madness. I never imagined my parents being there for me like they have, but they've been really a major part of my healing process, and have assured me that I have nothing to be ashamed of, no matter our culture. Now that it's safer to, I've been back and forth from my place to theirs once a week. Naturally, some drama has occurred though. Turns out my big fat Greek family knows his new girlfriend's big fat Greek family. We go to the same church. To say that things got messy is an understatement, but my mum ended up telling everyone in the community that this family's daughter ruined her home. I feel awful about this, but my family comes from a culture where the woman in the situation is wrong and the man is just doing what men do. Awful? Trust me, I know, but it's their old school ways, and this girl is notorious in our community for her bad reputation, with drugs, partying, etc. This made it so much worse, and I feel like I'm to blame, but also not. If there's one thing I've realized, it's that I cannot control the actions of others, but I can control my reaction. I apologized to her on behalf of my family in a letter I'm sure she got. In return, I got a message on Facebook from her mother that says I deserved everything I got, and she hopes I lose everything. They are just a super sweet family. So that's pretty much a little update of what has happened in a month. We're waiting to take things to court, and soon I will be a free woman. Recently, our 3rd wedding anniversary passed. It was the first time during all of this madness where I just felt fine. I took my dog in my car to the beach that day and sat with a red Solo cup filled with one of those super mini cheap bottles of Barefoot Moscato and reflected on life in general, and long story short, I know who I am and whose I am, and I will, and I am, will come out of that stronger than I've ever been. What does that mean? In a way, I'm looking at it like I'm getting a second chance to relive my 20s. By this time, I can't just get wasted and go to work the next day because barf. I'm in no rush to date anytime soon. I'm still young and have my whole life ahead of me. I saw a picture of him and the new girl recently, and instead of being upset or angry, I kind of felt bad for him. He lost someone who was with him when he had nothing, someone who really loved him and gave her all, just to be with a 21-year-old girl who was using him for material things that just don't matter. It doesn't make sense, but in the grand scheme of things, I dodged a bullet. This is just a chapter in my book that I can't wait to be done with. Thanks all, much love. Hope you enjoyed that one. The next post is by user Silent Flamingo, titled PA/New York. Adopted out biological child has severe special needs. Adoptive parents pushing us to help. My now husband and I legally gave our first child up for adoption 10 years ago to some relatives. We are now married and have a child together. Our biological child has severe autism. He is nonverbal and cannot be toilet trained, among other things. The adoptive parents obviously know who we are because we are distant relatives. This was supposed to be a semi-open adoption, but we have only seen this child twice at family functions since his birth. Since December, they've started sending out messages and phone calls that make it clear that they believe this is somehow different than a normal adoption. They now want us to assume custody and take care of our first child. The only written proof we have is a few texts saying that we need to take responsibility, and that I need to contribute more than I might have thought, because the child isn't normal. They've insinuated on calls that he may need to come live with us soon enough. We can't afford the care this child needs, and he was legally adopted by these people at birth. What is our obligation here? We've stopped responding at all out of fear of creating an agreement or expectation, and we don't have money to just donate anyway. You don't have any. When you have a child, you become their legal parent. That transfers parental rights and support obligations to the adoptive parents. I feel terrible for this child. The adoption was legal, he is not your child anymore. The adoptive parents cannot gouge you for money because he has special needs. Out of fear for his safety, I would call CPS and have them pay a visit to the family and make sure he's not chained in the attic. You cannot return a child you've adopted simply because they're sick/disabled. If he was legally adopted, then you have absolutely zero obligation to his care or to the new parents, regardless of their connection to you. If they were to leave him with you or anyone else, they could be charged with child abandonment, as he is legally their responsibility. From what you've said, they clearly need some support. Perhaps you could refer CPS so that they and their child get the help they need. And furthermore, if they try and dump and run, OP's only response should be an immediate call to the police and CPS. Our child was left on our doorstep without our consent. We cannot care for the child. The longer the delay, the worse things get, and the more details they give the police, the less likely they are to get involved. A profoundly disabled child was left on my doorstep without my consent is one thing, but if they try explaining to the cops that it technically is their child, but was adopted by the family 10 years ago, it's very likely the cops will go, civil issue, and refuse to do anything. You could explain the issue in further detail to CPS, but not police. What happens if the police show up and ask questions? You tell the police that your relatives have told you they are having trouble caring for their child. They asked for financial help, which you refused, and today they abandoned their child with you. Tell them the minimal amount necessary. This child's parents abandoned this child on my doorstep. If they ask if you're related, then you tell them what OP said, that they're very distant cousins. The fact that the child is biologically theirs is not relevant to the situation because the child's actual legal parents abandoned him. Again, if the police hear the child is ours biologically, but he was adopted at birth by said family members, so legally he's not our child anymore, blah blah blah, then that's where the police go, crap, I'm not getting involved, and then decide it's a civil matter and drive away. Then CPS has to get involved before the child gets taken to a safe environment. Posted by user Admires Great Stories. Titled, Help! Burial Laws in California for Not Married Partner. So my, female 60, partner, male 85, of 26 years, died at home under hospice care a week ago. That is a huge difference. My god. She was 35 when she married this guy? Whoa. He had not made any arrangements for his burial, but he did tell me what he wanted. Monday morning, I made all the arrangements. As the funeral home was filling out the death certificate, they asked his marital status, and I explained that we had never married because he would have lost the healthcare he was receiving for his disability. It took until Friday for the hospice doctor to be ready to sign the death certificate. At that time, I was asked to bring my POA for healthcare to show I have the right to make the arrangements. I can't find it. We created it about 6 or 7 months ago, but I can't find it. I never made the copy for the hospital, no one there ever asked for it, so I can't retrieve a copy from them. What am I going to do? It's been a week and we're doing a green burial. No embalming, the clock is ticking and I'm panicking. Did you do the power of attorney through an attorney? They may have a copy. I wish I used a form the hospital gave me and had it notarized. No attorney. Power of attorneys expire upon the person's death. That being said, the hospice should have a copy. They asked me if I had one, but didn't ask for a copy. Perhaps they would have if he had lived longer, but he was only at a home a few days before he died. I know throughout this long process of hospitalizations, doctor visits, etc., that I was benefiting from heterosexual privilege. People just assumed we were legally married, and I had the right to make decisions. I was stupid and lazy not to nail things down legally much sooner. If you cannot find it, California law determines who has the right. If you're on good terms with these people, they may agree to your wishes and authorize them. If they take over and do what they want, you may have little recourse. First, did he have a will? If so, did he perhaps put a statement in the will about you having the right to handle things? In the absence of that, the order in which people have the right goes 1. Adult children, 2. Adult siblings, 3. Farther down the line, grandchildren, nieces or nephews, 4. A legally appointed conservator or conservator. Then we get to the funeral director. You might be able to work with the funeral home under this part of the law. The funeral director or cemetery authority shall have complete authority to control the disposition of the remains and to proceed under this chapter to recover usual and customary charges for the disposition when both of the following apply. Paraphrased by me, none of the people listed above are known to exist, or none of them can be found after reasonable effort. This gives me hope. Thank you. I hope he didn't really answer that, but okay. Update on burial laws in California for unmarried partner. Hey, I wrote this post, and I thank the people who commented very much. They were reassuring in a time of stress. So what happened was, when I went to the funeral home for the initial meeting, I didn't want to say married on the form, but for some stupid reason I said spouse, thinking it was the same legally, but did describe our relationship. Whoops! It was the wrong word and caused confusion at the county office with the death certificates. Fortunately, the funeral home was very helpful with refilling out the paperwork and walking it through as fast as they could. I described myself as his friend. FYI, I asked, thinking of this board, I could have also put housemate, and in this circumstance, where there were no living relatives, it would have been equally okay. County offices were just starting to shut down from COVID. Early March, but the paperwork finally came through, and he was buried March 13th, 2 weeks after his death. Thank you again to everyone who commented. It was a great help. And that's where I'm going to leave this one today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Illegal transfer of house ownership, ? I don't know what to title this. Indiana. So my mother has a house. Been in our family for almost 100 years now. Never had a mortgage. Never had home equity. Anything. Ever. Mum up to date on property taxes. No tax sale. Nothing. I went out to the lake house to get some of my stuff. While maintaining it year round, grass, weeds, etc., it is a summer lake house, and we use it for storage, etc. When I entered the house, it looked like someone had broken in. So I asked a neighbor, and she said the bank took it, and so here we are. I called and filed a police report of all stolen items that I'm assuming the people at the bank hired took. And the police officer is to call my mum tomorrow after he figures out what he can. He informed my mum there is a law where if you care for a property for more than 30 days, you can lay claim to the property. However, my mum had hired a guy to take care of the property, and the bank's vendors turned him away. My neighbor says that they entered with a key, and I can still get in with mine. I am the sole person with a key, my mum doesn't even have one. How is all that possible? The officer told us to be sure we aren't charged with trespassing to not come back. However, he let me get all my stuff. My mum got no notice of legal transfer, no nothing. How is any of this legal? Can someone explain? Or what do we need to do? Edit. Another question. My mum talked of changing the locks on them and was wondering how good and bad of an idea that would be. Edit 2. They also have a padlock on the back door, but didn't change the front door locks, which I don't get. Edit 3. To clarify, there is a sign-in sheet in the home that vendors are supposed to sign when they work on the home. With the name of the bank in the header, there is also a sticker on the front window with a number to a security company that is employed to secure homes for banks. The bank has winterized it, and has already started replacing the roof and has done the gutters. Sorry for those of you wondering if it's just neighborhood gossip. Edit 4. Wow, I appreciate all of you. Those of you saying to move back in, The house is livable, but there are repairs that need to be done and the house is 45 minutes from town. If I didn't have kids, I'd be out there in a heartbeat. But my boyfriend and I were living out there up until February 2019 and had to move out because we were far from town. The electric bill was through the roof. 4 kids make that hard. Because the house is not insulated to be a winter home, and it just reverted back to a summer home to fish storage. And also, Mum asked to run a credit check. She said she already had credit monitoring set up and gets daily notifications. Nothing weird has been reported to her credit. No equities or the like. Update for now, Sergeant coming to take my mum's statement today. We are waiting, they spoke on the phone for a good hour. He pulled up her deed while on the phone and said he sees no case for a lien or foreclosure. He's stumped, but working. He is going to call the security company. Again, cannot reach the bank or attorney until Tuesday. The officer had 2 things conflated, tenancy and adverse possession. I'll get adverse possession out of your way since I'm sure that's your larger concern. Someone can occupy a property openly, notoriously, continuously, for a period of 10 years and be able to attempt to claim title, not 30 days. This is adverse possession and is in fact a thing. Someone occupying a property for 30 days can argue a tenancy exists and is entitled to an unlawful detainer hearing before LE can throw them out. But you don't see there's a person living there. I don't know why the officer believed that you could just be charged with trespass, but I suspect he's just exercising an abundance of caution because when LE intervenes in a civil dispute to the extent it becomes an unlawful eviction, by removing a squatter, it is possible that LE holds liability since it's outside their authority. Tenancies can't be terminated by forcing someone out. Really, just the refusal of LE to involve themselves in forcing someone out is what people keep calling squatters' rights, but they are wrong, because that term actually means adverse possession, but really under the law doesn't have a meaning at all. It's just a pet peeve of mine when some people use it to mean due process, under which someone cannot be evicted without a court saying so. Pardon this side rant, but it really gets confused quite a lot. Your mother needs a real estate attorney. I suspect there was no bank involved here, but in the event the faxes were not paid, it is possible that a finance company purchased it at a tax sale. But this is so unlikely, I am loath to mention it as soon as possible. I think the neighbor is repeating information told to them and are incorrect about a bank repossession because it is simply not possible. Somewhere, someone made either a grievous error or else acted maliciously, and either or both are difficult to undo. I suspect that the deed is still in your mother's name though. I have the sign-in sheet with the bank name on the paper. They have put bids for people to fix the house up. The bank is a mortgage lender, which again she had no mortgage. We are a very tight-knit community out there, so when she saw people snooping around, being the president, she asked them what they were doing. They told her they were the bank and that they owned the house, and she physically watched them enter with a key. None of this makes any sense to me. How they got a key, how they claim the house is theirs, none of it makes sense. They even have a security company number on the house to call if anyone notices anything off. The company is Safeguard. They are employed to secure houses for banks. If there has never been a mortgage, the next concern I would have is a relative or close associate with the family falsifying an equity loan. This type of fraud is less rare than, say, banks accidentally foreclosing on a house that had nothing to do with, but it's not exactly common either. In any case, this is unquestionably a situation in which an attorney is needed. Assuming a bad actor or bank error, it's incredibly arduous to slog through the legal process just to get the legal documentation to figure out what happened, and what steps to take. It is likely that it will work out, but it will take time and will be frustrating and upsetting. Having an attorney deal with the process helps remove the anger and emotion from the equation in application, and will make it much easier on your family. We disallow users from asking for updates here, and I certainly won't ask you to go out of your way to keep us posted, but I will abuse my mod power for a moment to say I would be very interested in hearing how things are going. That's really interesting, guys. We disallow users from asking for updates here. Really interesting one. Just saying, some people in the comments, really interesting. Also, we will never second guess an involved attorney, so it's not a good idea to come ask us if we agree with what her lawyer says or suggests. but you are always welcome to come back and let us know how things are progressing and ask any simple questions about the process you may have. Someone actually pinged me to look at your question, as I come across a fair amount of both adverse possession claims as well as unauthorized tenancy questions in my area. To be honest, taking everything at face value and recognizing that you're all just collecting facts as you can right now, I can think about 6 or 8 likely things that could have happened. They can be plotted in a bell curve form: a simple human error and oversight failure on one end, and an institutional process involving bad faith acts on the part of the lender at the other. The more likely scenarios are someone with just enough access to your family to get financial and personal info applying for, receiving, and defaulting on an HELOC, or refinance could have led to a foreclosure. A less institutional, but also less a simple human error, but still a massive frick-up within the mortgage lender due to hideous record keeping, and or a party, usually acquainted with the owner and frequently related, utilizing identity theft to sell the property to a partner in crime. Then the fraudulent seller and partner share the money and default on the mortgage. I suspect the most likely scenario involves an associated party taking out financing on the house and changing the contact name and information for notices so your mum never got them, or something as simple as forwarding the mail to the home as you use for storage. But it's impossible for us to know. There are just so many possibilities. I will keep your family in my thoughts though, as I absolutely do understand how anxiety and panic provoking this is for you all. Your mum can go check the deed herself on Tuesday at the recorder's office to see if and when the deed was altered, as well as it should have history of financing. Her own credit record may reflect revolving lines of credit she doesn't recognize. She can check for any large jump or drop in her credit score as well over the last few years, as those can give clues as to when and sometimes clues to what happened. The good news is real estate transactions have to be done on paper, and there are significant rules as to what has to be written and how and signed and dated and witnessed and notarized, so the information is out there. Best of luck, and don't be shy to come back with additional questions. I wish we could give you a more clear direction here, right now, but have mum call a real estate attorney as soon as possible. The long weekend may delay it until Tuesday, but lawyers are still working, and it shouldn't be too difficult to find someone. The fact that they have a key that is the same as yours isn't all that weird. A locksmith can open a lock, look at the pins, and make a key that works. They can also stick a blank in a lock, and based on where the rub marks are from the pins, they can file the key down, eventually making the key that works the lock. It's called impressioning. There are also other tricks like removing all the pins, or some of the pins, so any key, or a key with the cuts of just the pins they left in, will work. Either way, I wouldn't spend too much time trying to figure out how they got a key. A locksmith that is called by a bank will usually trust what the bank is saying and do the work. No, the reason I feel it's weird is they didn't change the lock after getting in, but I agree it's not worth festering over compared to the big picture. Hubby and I work for several different preservation companies. Refuse to work for Safeguard for this reason. Google Safeguard and loads of issues just like this occur. Similar address, different town. Transposed number. Your best bet is to get a lawyer ASAP. They will be ever so nice to you so you don't sue them. There are hundreds of lawsuits against them for this very same thing. There's a reason people call them screwguard. So you're saying it could possibly be a fault on the preservation company's part and not the bank themselves? Photograph and document everything about the cabin's current state. Write down what is different about it from the last time you were there, especially what is missing. Track down the deed and any tax records proving total and complete ownership of the property. Call your bank and inquire about their alleged trespassing /B&E/burglary on your property/house. Change your locks. Run a credit check on yourself and your mom. If any of the above don't go 100% smooth, hire a lawyer. Kicking myself today. Didn't take pics last night because I was so upset. The neighbor told the lawn guy that the owners were here and trying to figure out what was going on, and he warned her that if we enter again, they'd press charges. So I took pictures of the outside of the house. I'm not looking to fight a misdemeanor on top of a civil suit. Update on stolen lake house. Indiana because the bot yelled at me. Not looking for advice, so Modmin team can lock, but wanted to update y'all. My mother got a hold of the bank today, who said they had no record of the address in their system. However, they did have a completely different lake house in their system. They said they had no financial interest in the house at all. They directed her to their real estate company in our county. He said he hasn't had a house at that lake in many years. She then contacted the property preservation company that secured the house. The CSR got very frantic, asking for the burglary report case number, and again told her someone would call her. She also stated our address was not in their system. She hired a locksmith at the direction of her attorney, and we went out there and placed warnings and changed locks. The locksmith informed us they actually didn't have a key. As previously stated, I was the only one with a key, and they credit carded the door and replaced the lock in the back and just said screw it when it came to the front door. Neighbors took pictures of our license plates but didn't call the police, so I'm in fear something bigger is going on. But now it's just up to the DA to find someone to press charges against and civil court for emotional damage and loss of truly invaluable things that they stole while renovating. Thank you all again. And that was posted 2 days ago. I don't think there's going to be another update on this one. So, Jesus Christ. That leaves it up in the air, but what can you do? Posted by user Mistress Nadine 18 hours ago, by the way. Urgent. My boss threatened to fire all staff for unionizing for wanting safer conditions, and I think he's going to follow through later today. Can someone explain the difference between non-recall and termination as it applies here? New York. Hello, I've been organizing my co-workers in union activity in an effort to get safer working conditions and maybe higher pay when we, a retail business, reopen after COVID-19. We don't feel like our safety concerns were taken seriously or that they were willing to budge on some important parts of our requests. This business is a small chain with a corporate structure above us. Our demands were sent to the higher-ups after our boss freaked, and I don't think enough was done, and neither do any of my co-workers who have participated. We were told that they are aware of our demands and will address them when the time is right. After our demands, they very suddenly decided that they were going to reopen this Saturday, the 30th, without discussing doing more about workers' safety concerns than the half-assed nasty email that was sent. About half of the staff at this store has an underlying health condition, and in my opinion, they have offered the bare minimum, if that. I have educated myself and my co-workers about the National Labor Relations Act and that we should be protected should we unionize. That seems like the direction it's going. Crap is going to hit the fan today. He privately emailed a co-worker that if I, serious health condition, or another co-worker, also with a serious health condition, but has another job and may just leave this one, didn't agree to work a specific shift, he will have considered us all to quit and will replace all staff. We have been very clear that we are willing to work, just with better conditions. We have been clear that we do not want to quit. I reference the NLRA a fair bit in the email, and make reference to the ADA. He's not willing to make reasonable accommodations for those of us at higher risk. But the part about considering us to have quit is throwing me. Can someone explain non-recall and termination as it relates here? I have been referred to a local law service, but I do not know how long that will take. A similar organization, unrelated COVID crisis, yay me, referred me to a lawyer within the same organization who doesn't practice employment law, so she was unable to answer some of my questions, and I do not know how long it will take me to get put in touch with an employment lawyer, but I have to send this email today. All help is appreciated, TIA. Location NY, but not New York City. Genghis Kant says, I'm not a lawyer, I have organized a workplace though, and will replace staff. The boss can't easily replace you all. If they claim they can, they're bluffing. Training, onboarding, etc. costs money and time. It makes more financial sense to negotiate with you all than it does to fire you all and try finding people that will risk their health, hire them, and train them. So, solidarity is necessary here. As a group, you all need to inform the boss that you will not be going into work until negotiations have taken place or demands have been sufficiently met. Preparing to strike would then also be reasonable. Privately emailed a co-worker. Also, that private communication is concerning. You're a union, even without NLRB recognition. You're a group. Refuse any attempts the boss makes to single people out. The boss may be trying to determine who the leader is to try to remove them, and/or trying to create hierarchy to diminish your collective power. In other words, union busting. Not a New York attorney, not your attorney, strictly federal advice. You need to contact the NLRB and file an unfair labor charge. Your employer has violated your Section 7 rights. If you're serious about unionizing your workplace, you'll need to show that at least 30% of the workers are interested in a union. The NLRB will then come to your workplace and host essentially a secret election where you can vote for unionization or not. If the election passes by a majority of employees, half plus one, you will have formed a union and your boss will be forced to recognize and bargain with your union. The NLRB will also prevent and punish your boss for committing unfair labor practices, like discouraging unionization via threats to fire everyone or close down the operation. Here's some websites that you guys can look at if you're interested. Are there any local labor unions that you've been in contact with? There are usually organizations that are organized to help people in your situation, and they can guide you through this process. I've been working with the guidance of other successful community organizers, but I thought we would still be protected by NLRA because we're still making a concerted collected effort. What is your industry? An established union can support you through this process. Adult retail. I'm a dildo peddler. Nice. I'd also say you should contact the Sex Workers Union. If I remember correctly, they were working to protect the entire adult film industry workforce, as well as other tangential employees. Nice. Retail workers are frequently represented by the Service Employers International Union, or SEIU. They'd be a good place to call. Not a lawyer, but I am a union member. Been involved in union negotiations. You should have been in contact with a union rep from the beginning. Sounds like you might be screwed, and just so you know, this isn't 1950. You're better off with a union, if you don't have unreasonable demands, than you are without one. But a union won't make all your dreams come true. They don't have the power they once did in most cases. I'm keen to see where that one goes. That's really interesting, and I hope it opened you guys up to some information as to what's going on with union workers. This is an interesting time to be living through. Posted by user RE3CK6LD0OSS. Titled, "Someone stole my $2,000 mountain bike from my apartment complex bicycle storage room." And it's just douche, it says. Nice. The lease states that we are not allowed to store our bicycles in our apartments, so the only other option is to store it in the bicycle storage room. The room is locked and requires a key fob to get in. Every tenant has a key fob, so it could have been anyone who lives here, or even a worker who works here because it's a new building. Someone else had their bicycle tire pump stolen the other day as well. There is a camera right outside the room that faces the area, so they will likely be on camera unless they covered it up. I've contacted my landlord and the apartment manager. I've also filed a police report online. I won't hear back from any of them until hopefully Monday. If I don't get it back, I'm planning to go through my renter's insurance to get compensation. From a Google search, it looked like they would just cover it up. Just wondering if there is anything else I should do. If there's a security camera and fob system, there's a very good chance they can figure out who did it, even if they are concealing their face. Fobs are assigned to units and tenants, and each strike is recorded on software that tells you to the second who accessed what and where. If you can narrow down when you think it was stolen, it will be helpful to the management when reviewing footage and checking for logs. That's what I'm hoping for. It happened within about a 26-hour period, so I'm suspecting it was during Friday night. You should start making a claim with your renter's insurance now. I would highly advise you not doing this, as I work in insurance. You don't want to start a claim you don't need to. Even with a $0 payout, the system will register the claim, and depending on the company, charge you for it. You would only want to file a claim if, after you get a hold of the apartment complex, they aren't able to get the bike back. You would also want to make sure you have some receipt or proof your bike is worth that much, because without it, they could not pay you what it's worth. And depending on if your policy is actual cash value or replacement, it might include depreciation, and you have a deductible on top of that. I'd wait it out until you hear from them. Unfortunately, some of the cheaper systems don't keep a history of which key was swiped. Learned this lately after a similar problem as OP. If you do get your bike back, or another bike, I would be storing it in my apartment. If management complains, Show them the police reports and tell them they have shown you that their storage room isn't secure or protected in any way. Putting it in a locked room that everyone has a key to is totally not safe. That is ridiculous. The only way I would use that room again is if they guarantee they will replace anything stolen or damaged. Good advice. Also, why don't they want bikes in apartments? Surely you can just request any damage to the walls is repaired prior to you moving out. Is there any other reason for them not allowing it? In the landlord's eyes, preventing that damage is better than repairing it when the tenant moves out. Also applies to taking an unwashed mountain bike into a carpeted apartment. And of course, if a tenant takes an unwashed mountain bike up the stairs to their apartment, it will leave trails of mud on those stairs, causing a slip hazard, for which the landlord may be liable. So another valid reason to not allow bikes in apartments. But I have a question. Did OP secure their bike to anything inside the storage room? I'm not victim blaming here, just curious. OP didn't reply to that. Former property manager here. There is no way to stop a determined thief. You can only make it difficult enough that they'll pick an easier target. Chances are they followed someone into the building, popped the lock to get into the room. Unless it's covered with a metal plate, they can do that with a thin piece of metal or plastic, and took the first bike they saw that was unlocked or had a cable lock that could be easily snipped. If management isn't commenting, it's probably because they saw that on the video and don't want tenants to know how easily the thief bypassed security measures. File a police report by all means, but it's unlikely a stranger can be identified by a recording if they aren't a tenant. If there's no metal plate over the latch to the building or bike room, raise hell with management. It's a relatively simple and cheap method to make it too annoying for thieves to bother. Edit: if you don't have renter's insurance, you should. It is a few dollars a month and this would have been covered. Most likely this will be an expensive lesson. Sorry it's happened to you. Update regarding my stolen mountain bike from my apartment complex. Not much came of it. I filed a police report online over the weekend, and then immediately after posting, a commenter suggested I file a claim with renter's insurance, so I did that. I waited until Tuesday and didn't hear anything back from the police department, so I called and spoke to the station officer, who told me that an officer was sent out to check the footage from the store next door, but didn't find anything useful. He told me that the officer tried to contact the apartment manager, but couldn't get a hold of anyone. I relayed this to the apartment manager, who had checked the security footage from the apartment and told me that he potentially found something. He also said that he had been in contact with the police and would update me. I haven't heard from him since and have decided to stop pursuing it further. My insurance company called me on Wednesday. I spoke to them for maybe 10 minutes, and without any issue, they sent me a check out for the value of the bike minus a $500 deductible. I used that money and bought a much better mountain bike and 2 kryptonite locks and have been storing it in the storage room. Hopefully this one stays there. Thanks for the help. Glad this one ended well. G'day there guys, Outro Markee here. Hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed making it today. If you did, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. Tell me what you thought about it down below. Also, if you like memes, be sure to head on over to my second channel, Markee 2. It should be one of the sexy Australian faces on screen, the one without the flag. It's my latest and greatest creation, and I hope you like it. Also, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my channel members and Patreon subscribers. You guys do so much good for me, and the support goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I love you guys, and I appreciate all the help and support you provide me on this channel. Also, if you want to join the family, links are down in the description below, or click that join button next to the subscribe button. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that one today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.